Hi guys, Miss Moon here. We're doing another Photoshop tutorial today. This one is a request from Tabby, or the Spark of Revolution, who you might remember from the BristolCon video, the Kylo Ren from that. She was curious as to how I get replacing backgrounds to work, and I realised that although I've covered lighting and I covered the explosion, I haven't really covered backgrounds in depth. So I thought I'd just go over that with you guys. This is one of the most common things I do with Photoshop, because finding good backgrounds, especially when you're at a con and it's a bit of a rush, can be hard. So let's get right to it. This is the photo we're going to be using as the base. It's actually a photo that Tabby took. Well, no, it's a photo that Tabby's friend Yonki took on Tabby's camera. So we're just going to start out by, we're going to mask off the cosplayers from the background. This one is actually a better example of what you should be doing than the previous example that I've shown, which was Quill and Peggy, because here I've actually managed to get a fairly plainish background. Plus, Star Wars, I love the fact that most of the costumes are kind of monochrome. It's easier to mask them off. So to start off with, I'm just using this quick select tool. It is keyboard shortcut W, the one that is not the magic wand. Like I say, you can do this with the magic wand, you can do this entirely with the lasso if you want. I'm just doing a quick run around, you can see this isn't right, with the quick select, because it'll save me time later, because I find it easier to edit an already existing selection than to create the lasso from scratch. So here we've got a very basic that is all wrong. So now we're just going to zoom in, and here's the tedious part. We're just going to get our lasso, just our generic lasso tool, L, and we're going to hold down shift and add little bits. I picked this picture mainly because one of the most hard things about adding backgrounds is actually getting feet to look right. If you've got it cropped off at like the waist, it's a lot easier to do because you don't have to make it look like that person is actually stood on the background. They can just be stood in front of the background. It's a lot easier. But what's the point in showing you this and only showing you the easy way out, huh? I may as well show you the tricky stuff. Feet are the hardest things to get selected right, I find, just because I can't always see the sole of the shoe. I know Leia's shoe's poking out there, but I'm not going to include it in because it looks better without. We've got the gun. We're just, like I say, this is pretty boring. We're just selecting the whole thing. I'm rushing and that's making me sloppy, and that's not good because that'll mean I have to spend longer fixing it. Sometimes with stuff like this gun, it can be easier to switch to the polygonal lasso tool and do it that way, because that way you get a straight line. That's what I'm probably going to do when we come to the lightsaber, because although there are ways, like using rulers and things, to make straighter lines easier, we ain't using them. It's easier just to use the polygonal lasso, I find, when it's something like this. For clarity, like I say, I'm using a tablet, I'm using a bamboo pen, Wacom bamboo pen, but this is perfectly possible to do with a mouse. I just find it slightly easier with a tablet because I'm left-handed and I use my mouse with my right hand, so I have better control when I'm using a tablet pen. Okay, now comes to the bit, if you've watched my previous Photoshop tutorials, you already know this bit, but I'll just reiterate it just for clarity's sake. For this, we're going to leave a little bit of a halo around the hair. Leia's hair isn't actually that wispy, so I don't need to leave that much of a halo, but I'm just going to leave a little bit of a one, and you'll see why later. You want to make sure that you've only got solid stuff selected, that if there's any kind of fuzz, that it's completely left out. This will be easier to show on the Kylo hair, to be honest, because Leia's hair is so solid. I should say, just to credit her, this Leia is Desert Rain, who you also might recognise from the BristolCon video, because she was Frisk, and she was also hanging around in the in Tesco with us. Best Leia. So now we've got me and my lovely BB-8. So as you can see, I'm just trying to get all this wispy stuff. I don't want that in this selection. And I know that some people will be like, oh, you know, you've got to get it though, because otherwise it'll look weirdly cropped off. No, because we're going to fix that later. So yeah, I'm going to leave all these bits that are kind of see-through. The BB-8 is a little more obvious because it's white and the background is grey, which is why the quick select tool was having a much easier time selecting me and Leia than it was selecting Kylo, because we tried to find a neutralish background, but trying to find a neutralish background when you've got people all in white and people all in black is a little difficult. If you can find, like, I think this is just in front of a door. If you can find a background that it's plain like this. It'll make your life so much easier. There it is. Right, here's Kylo's hair. I want to get the bigger chunks in because I find that sometimes my method will cut them out, but I don't want any little wispy bits like that. If you can do it where like you can keep the ground and just replace the back wall, as it were, I can do another thing with that if you want, because I'm going to do that with some of the Undertale pictures that I've got, because I've got them against a load of these lovely autumnal leaves, but I want to replace the background so it's not quite so clearly a park that we were in. I'm going to apologise for those background noise, by the way. There are people in the house today. See, here's what I mean about the shadow causing heck. Because I can't see. There it is. That's what's happening. There's another layer. Yeah, sometimes you have to just jockey back and forth until you can figure out what it is that's happening. And yeah, so you can see with the, because we're on a paved floor, some of the paving is janking up the quick select tool. But the problem with the brick wall was that that was happening with all the way around the picture rather than just on the feet, which made my life not fun. That looks all good. Just get rid of that. That looks good to me. Right, so we're going to zoom out so we can see all of us. Then we're going to click on this refine edge bar here. I don't know where this is on I think this might be something else on other Photoshops. If you Google refine edge CS, whatever you have, you'll probably find whatever the equivalent is. They have an equivalent in every version. And then we get, this is the overlay, which we'll use in a second, but first we're going to put it on white because that'll make it look terrible. So put it on black, then it looks a lot better. Put it on white. We're going to smart radius and just, I don't know if you saw the difference there, but it just smudges the background a little bit. But yeah, we're just going to click this decontaminate colours, and we're going to go to a new layer with a layer mask. We can go to a new layer instead, but I prefer to do a new layer with a layer mask for this, because it can make some stuff later easier. Then we're going to use this refine radius tool, E. For that we're going to go back to the overlay. We're going to zoom in. Zoomed in too far. Zoom in on people's heads. And we're just going to draw around them. And we're just going to draw around it. The smart radius is supposed to make it so that it will realise where the edges are a little better, and it works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't, but I put it on anyway. This is just to catch those wisps, and generally it adds a bit of a blurred opacity around the edge. So like you see, we've got that now. So if I put that on black, put it on white, it's still not looking great, but when you've got more of a background behind it, then it'll look better than it would do if it was solid. Just trust me on this. And it's like any mask, you can always correct it manually with black and white brushes later. Right then, now for BB-8. You'll notice, try to do each colour in a separate pass, but also try and do it all in the same pass as much as possible, because it recalibrates between every single brush stroke, and you want it to realise that all these colours are the okay colours and all these colours are not. So there. This is working a little better on this, I think, than on layer, because you can already kind of see the effect that I'm after there. Figure it out. There we go. So if I put that on black, you can see that I've got the wisps in there. If I put it on white, you can see even more. It's not showing up on black because sometimes it doesn't. You can also use this for, I've been using it a little bit for Kylo's little fraying bits here a little bit, and it is something you have to think about if you're planning on doing this with a fursuit or something with a lot of hair, a lot of fraying stuff. That's annoying. I've got it in anyway. Okay, and dupe, and dupe. Yeah, you can't really see it on black at all because Kylo is the dark side. So there we have decontaminate colours. That I don't tend to mess with these. They tend to be right for me, but if you want to mess with them, you can. I'm not 100% sure what they do. So, okay. And then you can see we've got another layer here with a layer mask. So if I zoom out, we're on a blank background. And that's the start of how we do this. We've got the blank background. Next, I've actually done it right this time. Normally this then includes like half an hour of YouTube searching, Google searching even, as I look for the right picture. But for this, I actually prepared ahead of time, and I got the background I'm going to use, if I can find it. There we go. Just a generic corridor background. Put that behind us, and here's to hoping that it resizes okay, because sometimes when they're absolutely minuscule like that, they will not resize big nicely at all. This looks like it might be fine. This is just something that I nabbed off Wikipedia. It's just a set photo from, I think, Return of the Jedi? So I'm just going to move us down there a little bit so that we're nicely on the floor. That's something you have to be aware of, is you might have to replace people. Also to be aware of is lighting and shadows. See, we're there, but we don't look like we're there. We look like you've slapped a sticker of us on. So there's a couple of things I'm going to do. Firstly, I'm going to get my burn tool. No, cancel that. Yes, I know. Oh wait, this is a smart object, isn't it? I don't want that. Yeah. Rasterize your layers, because sometimes I do this with just copying and pasting directly off the internet, but I didn't want to be unprofessional and show you my Google history. So we've got the burn tool here, and we're just going to add a bit of a shadow. You might need to not press P, but press the square bracket. You might need to fiddle around with these settings with like highlights and what brush you want. Generally, as a rule, you want to use a really soft brush. The lighting's coming from directly above us, so we want it around there. And what is that stance I'm even in? Jeebus. The skirt hides a multitude of sins. So this is just to give a vague idea, because obviously different things reflect in different ways, but this is fairly standard, just a metal floor. There's some reflections from the window, but it won't be. So yeah, we've got that, but then we also have to change the fact that we're all lit by outside lighting, and very clearly not this lighting. So if we go to the contrast, just contrast that up, and then I'm maybe going to add a photo filter. The ways that you either change this to match your background are either we get the hue and saturation and we fiddle around with that, or we fiddle around with the colorize. This is obviously more if you're in a, this person is clearly under colored lights situation, or you can use a photo filter. I'm going to try a cooling one just to give us a slight hint of we're under artificial light. Photoshop comes with these, which are just colours. We've got, you know, underwater, yellow, whatever. It has these 3 warming filters and these 3 cooling filters. I tend to use the warming and the cooling filters more than I use the plain colours, just because they're better. But also if you want to, you can just pick the colour you want and go from that. Preserving the luminosity, if I turn it off, you can see that makes it look quite flat and quite drab, so I prefer to preserve it because I'm trying to make it look like we're under coloured lighting. You can also adjust the density. I might adjust that a little down actually, just because it's quite pronounced on us and not very on Kylo, but that's just like the power of the effect really. Then okay, you can put a photo filter on down here, photo filter, but this will put a photo filter on the entire picture, so that will affect the background as well, which I don't want to do for this particular example because I just want us to match with the background a bit better. I'm not happy with Kylo's shadow, you know. I'm gonna just blur it out of the edges a little bit. One of the bad things about this blur brush is that it gets more blurry the bigger it gets, but that means that if you want to do a wide blur but a small patch, it can be difficult. I'm sure there's ways to fix it, I just don't know. One other thing that I sometimes do is I'll add this gradient. Gradient is the same as the paint bucket, it's G. So we can just, if you hold down shift, it'll do it straight like that. If you don't hold down shift, it'll move around like that and you can get weird effects. I'm just going to keep it on a straight layer because I could get this by picking one of these two and reversing it, but I prefer to do it this way by going in each edge because that means that I can control how far the gradient's going on each edge. So for this, I'm just going to leave it up a bit. If you really can't get the feet to work, then one cheaty way to make it work is do like I've done here and just pull the gradient right up over the feet and hope that nobody questions you on it. And this is why I didn't do the lightsaber, did I? I'll show you how to lightsaber. What we do for the lightsaber is I'm gonna mask it off again. So quick select, that has not worked. This is mainly because we didn't make a new layer, we masked it off, so it's still, that stuff behind it is still behind to screw us up. I'm gonna go into the polygonal lasso tool and just correct this. There's the end. There it is. And then just, it's kind of annoying that there isn't really a keyboard shortcut to switch between different varies of lasso. If there is, then I don't know what it is and it isn't made clear. You have to hold down the sidebar button to do it. On some older versions I think it might be up here, but I'm not sure. There we go. That's got that selected. So what we're going to do is we're going to mask that off again. I'm just going to refine edge. I'm going to decontaminate these to a new layer because of the effect we're about to use. It can go funny if you use a mask. So what we're then going to do is we're going to go onto the FX tab down here on the layers. Outer glow. The colour is red. The size is bigger. The spread is bigger. And you can see that's already giving you a... Because lightsaber... One of the things about the lightsabers, right, is that because of the technology when they were made, they really are a really, really simple effect to do. I'm going to put the inner glow on it as well, like that. Red, bigger size, bigger choke. There we go. Control U, I'm going to colorize that. So there we go. You see the light. See this around the edge? This is why we didn't mask it off, because this happens sometimes, but it still happened. I don't know why. So we're just gonna, I think it's because we've moved, yeah, it's because we moved us down earlier. That part is not erased. If you have cropped pixels being erased, it might erase it for you. I don't have that erased because I make mistakes, so I prefer to have those pixels about. We're going to leave that gradient on. We're going to add a few more on the side here. No. And then pull a few more in from the corner. It kind of adds a bit of a photo effect on these, to be honest. That's kind of what we're doing. There we go. Just, it kind of makes the picture look more like it's bulging out because these are curving inwards, so it makes your people pop out more. I could crop out the ceiling, but I don't want... I kind of like to keep my original camera ratio right because stuff tends to view better like that. I'm going to add some in on the corners as well. I haven't got it on this. I would pull it all the way down, but because the light is on in the background there, it'll look really obviously fake. You can pull this layer behind the people, but that just, for me, emphasises how much I fucked up on the feet. So we're using that partly just to cover up the fact... It's happening a lot with these Kylo shoes. I don't know why. But yeah, it's partly just to cover up the fact that feet look weird. It sounds weird, but it's generally the feet where people are going to go, no, that's wrong. So we're just going to save this. I don't tend to save these as PSDs because they take up so much space. I'm saving these as JPEGs just because that's a file format that works well with everything. One thing you do want to be aware of is here, if this goes above 10, which is not going to here because we've actually half of the reason that this is so small is because we've got rid of the background. It's pushed the size of the image down. But if you if this is above 10, it won't upload to some sites. So I tend to save a big version and a little version that has a note on it saying you need to use this version when you're uploading to things like Tumblr, but you can use the other one when you're uploading to Facebook. That's how I Photoshop these things in. Okay, that's it guys. Hope that was useful to everyone. If there's anything that I failed to cover or that you think I should cover in another video, put a comment down below and I'll get to it. I hope that answered all of your questions, Tabby, and I hope that you managed to get this to work yourself. All of these photos that I've shown, along with more photos that I'm editing from Bristol, will be available on my Facebook page, Miss Moon Costumes and Photography, and you can also contact me there. If you want to see more of our content, we do vlogs, we do Photoshop tutorials, we do prop tutorials, CMVs, we'll give stuff a try. We're hopefully going to have more stuff for you in the new year, if not sooner. So talk to you then. Bye!
It was fun together.